Welcome to the Library Lived In. My name is Anise, and this is my co-host Lisa.
Hi.
And this month we read Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, which is a book I've had on my radar for a while. I had started reading it. I checked it out from the library like 7 years ago, probably. And I got a couple of chapters in. Well, not really chapters because they're not exactly chapters. They're not numbered chapters. I got partway in, but it wasn't able to finish before I had to take it back, and I never got around to picking it back up. So I was really excited to finally finish it, and I enjoyed it a lot. I feel like I do have to say this is probably our first PG-13 pick.
Yeah, for sure.
For language and innuendo. But I appreciated that it was not explicit in any way, which is always a big one for me. So, so I think I rate it at least 4 stars. I'm not sure if I can quite give it 5, even though I do own it. Maybe 4.5. What's your rating?
I was still gonna go with 5 until you reminded me about.
Oh.
Yeah. I'll go with 4.5 too. It's so brilliant. There's so you have to read it again because you can't get it all the first time. You probably can't get it all the first 5 times you read it. It just has 2 so well-read authors that wrote it that, there's so much going into it that you just know there's levels on levels of things that probably skipped right over your head. You just have to go back to it again and again. And I would definitely pick it up. I would buy it. But yeah, I would have appreciated skipping a couple little things towards the end there. So yeah.
So I'll go ahead and read the back of it so we can have our little synopsis. According to the nice and accurate prophecies of Agnes Nutter, which, the world's only completely accurate book of prophecies written in 1655 before she exploded, the world will end on a Saturday, next Saturday, in fact, just before dinner, so the armies of good and evil are amassing. Atlantis is rising, frogs are falling, tempers are flaring. Everything appears to be going according to divine plan, except a somewhat fussy angel and a fast-living demon, both of whom have lived amongst Earth's mortals since the beginning and have grown rather fond of the lifestyle, are not actually looking forward to the coming rapture. And someone seems to have misplaced the Antichrist. So, this book is about the apocalypse, except it's not exactly what you would expect it to be. So I guess we should talk about characters first and then the plot.
Sure.
So the 2 main characters are Aziraphale and Crowley. And Aziraphale is an angel and Crowley is a demon. And so they're just both here on Earth just trying to do their jobs, except they've kind of figured out that humans are already pretty good at doing good things or doing bad things on their own. And so they've just kind of taken up residence and are enjoying what the world has to offer them. Part of their job is also to, well, I guess they have different jobs concerning the Antichrist. So this baby is supposed to be switched with a human baby, and then it's going to grow up and introduce the apocalypse. But there's a mistake, and they kind of lose track of which baby is the one they switched, and so that plays into the story as well. other main characters, we have Agnes Nutter, who was a witch centuries ago, and one of her descendants is in the current time frame of the book in this last week of the world. We have Shadwell is a witch hunter, and Newton Pulsifer is a new witch hunter, and he's kind of like come into it because he's not really good at anything else, and so it's kind of like a hobby for him. We have Madame Tracy, who is Shadwell's neighbor and is possibly some kind of psychic, but you're not really sure if she's faking it or not. Who else do we have as far as main?
There's a couple other demons. What is it? Hasta is one of the bigger ones that's causing trouble and such.
Oh, we have the horsemen, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
That's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
So there's war, famine, pollution, and death. And then we have Adam, who is the Antichrist. After he grows up, he's 11 now, and he has friends. He has Pepper and Wensleydale and Brian are his friends. I think those are basically the main players in the book.
You got them all.
So let's talk about Crowley and Aziraphale first. What did you think of them as characters?
I think they're funny. I love them because first of all, there's kind of this maybe this hint that not all of the other angels and demons have been on the earth the whole time. The other ones all have other assignments and jobs, and some of them are coming and going and might make stops on the earth for whatever. But these 2 have been assigned the whole time. They've been there since the beginning. They were there when Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden. And so they have this bond, the 2 of them. I love how it describes it several times about how they get to figuring that they're close. You know, they have more in common with each other than they do with their own kind. And so I don't know, the way they play off of each other the whole time is just so fun. You know, like they both have this, like they maintain the image that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, maintaining their side. But you know.
Yeah. So Crowley is like a demon who's not all that bad, and Aziraphale is like an angel who's not all that good. Like I think it's really interesting how they seem to have become more and more human, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, I like at one point it says, you know, they reached this arrangement. Well, some things were just going to happen anyway. So what did it really matter who did it? So, you know, everyone now and again, Crowley might help a little blessing along, and Aziraphale might, you know, let something go that you shouldn't have let go or whatever, because, well, it was going to happen anyway. So,
yeah,
you know, it's all good. So,
and so I thought it was pretty funny that, like Aziraphale so he runs a bookshop, like a used bookshop. And so he's like an angel, and this is like his little heaven, is this little bookshop. I liked that a lot.
That makes a little comment from the authors, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't think I mentioned Agnes Nutter's descendant. Her name
Anathema.
is Anthema Device. Something that I learned was that Device and Nutter were both actual surnames of people that were tried as witches
Oh, really?
in real life history. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought Nutter was, but I couldn't remember for sure.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting.
So they threw that in there. And I found, well, we'll probably have to talk about this later. We'll talk about this later. We should finish talking about characters first. So there was her, and then Newt Pulsifer. I was like, throughout most of the story, I was a little confused with their part of the story. It didn't seem to make as much sense to me as all of the rest of it. Because they were kind of going off of the prophecies and like trying to determine, like, are we making our own choices, or are we just doing what the prophecies are saying? And so I think, I don't know, it made me feel a little weird, but maybe that was on purpose, because that is weird, and it must have been weird for them to experience that.
Good point. And I think that's a good point. I think maybe this is more towards the story as well, but I think that kind of comes in, like, doesn't get wrapped up until after the averted apocalypse at the end. The very, very end of the book, that point gets made. Are we making our own choices? Are we?
Yeah.
Or are we not? And so I looked it up. Anathema literally means one who is cursed. And I kind of think, you know, like she lives her life according to the prophecies. No, it says right here that this is what's supposed to happen. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, no, but that's not how Newton lives his life. You know, he's not happy with his life, but he lives it according to, well, this sounds good. I guess I'll just do that. So maybe there's something for meeting in the middle, you know. So
that's true. So let's see, who else do we have? The horsemen. I thought they were portrayed very well as like these unpleasant things that we deal with personified. Especially famine, I thought was very apt, because he was like, throughout the book, he's like building these huge corporations of like fast food empires of like this food that people eat, and they eat and eat and eat, but it's terrible for you. And so that's kind of the same thing as a famine, or the people who are starving themselves. I just thought there's like a lot of commentary between all these different horsemen and the bad things that are going on in the world. What did you think of them?
That's funny. Like, I didn't think through famine as well, but now that you pointed it out, like, yes, he did so good. And like the book that he wrote, you know, the recipe book that he wrote, and how he like signs it with the Revelations quote, and all of that is very perfect. And I really loved how they did war as well, how war was personified. I don't know that pollution really, I don't know if that one really stood out to me very well. I really liked death. Also, especially. So
that's death from Terry Pratchett's books.
Yes.
So it's always like the caps.
Yes.
Well, I mean, so how was that? You listened to the audiobook. How was that done in the audiobook?
Okay, so like I had the choice. I went through Audible, and there were two choices. There was the full cast, or there was not. And I could look it up and tell you who read it. But I didn't love the sample for the full cast. I just didn't love. Okay, so I had it was read by Martin Jarvis. And he, like, the voices are very different. He's a very good reader. And so he does voices that were just amazing and point on. And the inflections and things. I mean, he's a British, I might have mentioned that before, but he's British. And you get all the inflections of everything. And so you can just picture it. You can just picture it. Like you get all of that. Like when we read the Terry Pratchett books, I know like the font was different and everything, but here you can just hear it. You can just hear it in the attitude and the and then the inflections, the bits of humor, and I just think it was the way he read it. He was a good reader. So.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I quite liked it.
Yeah. Did you notice a parallel between the Four Horsemen and them, the four kids? Because I didn't until I went and like was reading some discussion questions for this book, and I was like, oh yeah, like they're totally like parallels, like every single one.
So that's one of those things that I felt like, yes, I saw parallels, but I knew there was more to it than what I was digging into, and I didn't have time to dig into more because I didn't finish it early enough to like stop and think on it all. But there were things that I was like, oh, wait. Yep. Okay. I see that. But there wasn't, like, I know I didn't have time to properly analyze it and pull out the things I should. And then there was the other four. What were they called? There were the four horsemen, and then the four like
the bikers.
I didn't understand what was going on with that. Like, and I didn't call myself this. No, let me change my name. I don't like that. I'm going to call myself this instead.
I think they just got excited because they realized that there were like actual like horsemen of the apocalypse, and they were going to let them tag along. And they were like so impressed that there was like war, like personified, like standing in front of them. They were like, I'm going to be something like unpleasant too. And like they only thought of unpleasant things. Like I can't even remember what it was, but they were ridiculous.
What was it? One of them was things that don't work after you thump them, even after you thump them. Okay.
I mean, that's an annoying thing, but I mean, it wouldn't bring about the apocalypse.
No, it was really weird. So those guys disappeared. But yes, no, I felt like, and I felt like that was intentional. The mirroring between, like it was a choice that Adam made when he decided, like, I'm going to take them and I'm going to go out and we're going to fix this. There's a moment in the book. Where he realizes who he is and what everything is and what's going on. And he goes, oh, okay, but I don't want this. And I think, and he talks about like, I don't know, like, okay, we're going to need the crown and the sword and the, whatever. Like he's setting them up to be the four. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. You tell me about what you read, about your questions and your parallels.
Well, it was just, I didn't go like super in depth on it either because I didn't finish until this afternoon also. But it was just that like War and Pepper were both like the only female in the group, and they were both redheads. Wensleydale had a black bike, like Famine did, and Brian, like when it first describes him at the beginning of the book, it's like something like he always has a layer of grime on him, and it's because he's been playing outside, but then that corresponds with pollution, and so they each have their parallel. And then Adam and Death are like the ones that are kind of like outside the group, like they're part of it but separate also. So I'm not really sure about like the symbolism of whatever, like the items that they used to defeat these things. Um, so I think I'd have to read it over a couple of times, or
Yeah.
maybe do some digging elsewhere to be able to understand those references.
What were they? It was a sword, a crown, and a
Scales.
scales. So the sword, War had the sword,
Mm-hmm.
and Pepper had the sword. But it was like, I love that it was like imagination. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, we picked up some sticks, but that
Yeah.
was good enough. I don't know, but I don't remember like the crown and the scales, what went to what, you know.
Well, I think I remember when Pollution got the crown because then he put it on and it just like turned black.
Okay.
But I don't remember the scales.
Yeah. See, and that's one of those like there's layers. You know, it had symbols and meaning, and then it's Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, so there's loads of something there, and I just didn't get to that.
Yeah.
And I love Death. I love how Death has just this like attitude. Well, can't do anything about me.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always loved Terry Pratchett's version of Death, and I think that's like he's a widely appreciated character. I had a couple of years ago there was like some kind of like battle of literary characters online. I don't even know where it was, but I saw it, and it was like the same thing they do with basketball, like brackets, and then each one they would eliminate someone, and the next character would move on until they got to like the final four. And so, what was cool about it was they had authors writing like the matchups between characters that you already know from other books, and so then each one was a new little story about these characters interacting with each other. And it was like a battle to that. And then at the very end, it was between. I'm gonna have to find. I need to send you the link to this because you have to. Read it. But it was a matchup between I can't remember who and whatever her name is that I can't remember either. Death's granddaughter from some of the other Terry Pratchett books, and well, I just have to Google it now.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, and then that turned out to be like the week that Terry Pratchett passed away. And so the author, her name is Susan Stohellett. That's her name. She's Death's granddaughter in a bunch of the Discworld books.
Okay.
But anyway, so she's like in this final matchup of all these literary characters. And it was another author, and I can't remember his name either, but he wrote it, and it was so great.
Well, if you find that, I think
I read that, I was like, yes, like everyone loves Terry Pratchett's Death. Anyway,
it's brilliant.
So I thought this book was really interesting that it was written by two authors, and I was trying to, as I was reading, see if I could tell which, and like the parts where Death is speaking, like that's obviously Terry Pratchett, and there are a couple of parts that I felt fairly certain were things that Neil had written. Did you see any of that, or did it just all come together for you?
I think, well, two things. As much as I love both of them, I don't think I've done enough reading like purely of one or the other for an extended period of time to strictly pick voice. Mm-hmm. No, especially like coming right into it. I feel like if that I could. Right. The other thing is doing the audio versus reading it, I think it was easy to just
Mm-hmm.
go with the reader and not do that.
Mm-hmm.
When you're reading it yourself in the book and you've got your voice in your head versus I have all these different voices,
Right.
then I don't think I had it so much. So
I think that's really impressive because I think if I was writing a book with someone, I don't know how that would happen.
I've thought about it a lot because I don't know that it would work very well with very many pair-ups. And this is two very well established, very brilliant.
So in the audio version, did it have the little afterword?
No, and when I was looking online, I saw that well, not only does it have the afterword, but the version in your hand is supposed to also have like a thing about, like, each author wrote the about the author for the other author.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I have it. It's in here.
Okay. And then they were supposed to have like frequently asked questions answered and stuff. And I was like, why don't I have that copy of the book?
Yeah, it's in here.
None of that is audio.
So it gives background. On a time, Neil Gaiman wrote half a short story. He didn't know how it ended. He sent it to Terry Pratchett, who didn't know either, but it festered away in Terry's mind, and he rang Neil about a year later and said, I don't know how it ends, but I do know what happens next. The first draft took about 2 months. The second draft took about 6 months. Quite why, we don't know, but it did include explaining the jokes to the American publishers, which I quite enjoyed. All the parts in here where it's like explaining things. I was like, yes, thank you.
The footnotes are awesome.
And so then the other questions it has is like, what was it like working with Neil Gaiman or Terry Pratchett? And so then they're like, oh, well, we weren't famous back then. Like, we just did it. Like, how did you write it? Mostly by shouting excitedly at one another down the phone a couple of times a day for 2 months.
Oh.
And so they say they can't really tell, like, some of the scenes they know one or the other of them wrote it. Apart from that, they just shouted excitedly a lot. That's what it says. At the end, when they were proofreading the final copy, Neil congratulated Terry on a line that Terry knew he hadn't written, and Neil was certain he hadn't written either. They both privately suspect that at some point the book had started to generate text on its own, but neither of them will actually admit this publicly for fear of being thought odd. Also, it says something about like a sequel was considered, but they just never got started on it. There be a movie. Neil likes to think that one day there will, and Terry is certain it will never happen. And the funny thing about that is that like eventually they were both like, no, like we're not going to do that. And then Terry Pratchett passed away. He had a letter that was to be sent to Neil after Terry passed away, and it told Neil that he thought he should have it turned into a movie. And they're working on a show right now. It's coming out next year on Amazon. And guess who's playing Crowley?
Who?
David Tennant.
It's gonna be so good.
It is gonna be so good. I found out today.
Oh, one episode at a time will kill me.
No, it's gonna be released on Amazon. Like, it's an Amazon production.
All at once, though?
Yeah, it should be. And so they'll have 6 one-hour episodes. And then after that, it's gonna air on BBC, but we get to watch it on Amazon first.
When does that ever happen?
I don't know, but it's happening next year.
Oh, I need a date, and I need to put it in my calendar with an alarm that says.
And I thought it was great. They announced some of the other, like, I think they started filming, but they don't have everybody in there yet. But Miranda Richardson is going to be in it. Rita Skeeter, she's going to play Madame Tracy, which I think is perfect.
That's fitting. Who's going to be Aziraphale?
It says Michael Sheen, which I'm not sure.
Arrow. You know who Arrow is? He'll do good.
Wait, what? He's in New Moon.
Yes, Arrow. The head of the vampires. No, the head of the, like the ones in Italy.
Maybe it's been too long since I watched that because I don't recognize.
You know what I really love him in, though? Michael Sheen. The best thing I loved him in, the movie that they made about when Princess Diana died and how the Prime Minister helped the Queen to deal with it?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
He plays the Prime Minister. He plays Tony Blair during all of that.
I haven't seen that movie.
You haven't? It's brilliant. It's so good. Yeah, I don't remember what it's called. Maybe it's called The Queen. I don't know. There's too many royalty movies. Yeah,
and so it has this list here of cast and characters, and I know Neil Gaiman is writing the show. So it's going to be great. So he's making sure that everything's right, and they are changing some things. But I think it will be good. Shakespeare is going to be a character in it, and I don't know why, but I'm really happy about it. It's going to be great.
Well, I think we should schedule a reread right before that happens.
Yeah. That would be great.
Oh my goodness. It's so good.
I'm excited about it too. So anyway, I think we kind of skipped ahead a little.
Sorry.
I got excited.
It's Christmas. I lost you.
Oh, did you have to look up the word ineffable? They used it so much?
I did look up the word ineffable because I thought I knew what it was getting at, and I was wrong. So, did you look up the word ineffable?
Yes, I did.
And?
Well, so I was like, they kept using it all the time. I was like, this is what I think it is, because I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So what did you come up with?
So I was thinking it was something like it can't be thwarted, like it's going to happen no matter what. That's what I was thinking it meant. But it means too great or big to be expressed with words, which could maybe be the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's the definition I came up with when I looked up as well. And I thought, oh, that makes way more sense with all the times they were using it. That's the reason nobody knows what's going on, because it's so great that we can't discuss it. So nobody really knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So I looked up loads of words just because I'm obsessed with words and I want to know like the dual meanings. I know like authors like this, they're using levels and levels of meanings. So I have to know like what all the.
So what did you think of all the references?
All the what?
References, like pop culture references that were in this book. I actually found a list, and it lists all of the references. I pinned it on Pinterest. And so this like
or yours
on the TLLI one. And so it's like a list of all the references and what they mean. But I was really happy that I actually felt like I got a lot of the references that were in here, which is nice. That doesn't always happen.
I agree. And I really, like, I feel like sometimes in a book it can date it, and this was written in the 90s, right?
It was written in 1990.
Oh, barely in the 90s. So sometimes you can feel like, okay, that kind of dates it. But I really didn't feel like it did.
No, I think they chose references that are well known enough now that it's like it's almost 30 years later, and all of those references are still like things people talk about and things people like. And so
Yeah.
I think that made a difference.
I think the things that would date it are more the things like there being a cassette tape in the car versus, and
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Which,
somebody not that much younger than us might not even know about that. That's funny. I don't think my kids know what a cassette is.
We have an old truck, so we have a cassette player in the truck. But my kids ask wonderful things like that embarrass me and make me feel old plenty of times. But no, I think about things like that when I think about books and what things authors choose to put in there. But all of the references I thought were relevant and sort of classic bits. Mm-hmm. So, but maybe at the time they were not. They would have been more modern. Mm-hmm. Which goes for their taste, I think.
Yeah. I think the references I enjoyed the very most were talking about Newt's car, the Wasabi, because it was just so funny to me. And then also like when it referenced cities in Japan and stuff, those weren't real cities. Like it was talking about sushi. And then like the boat, when the Kraken is like coming up, the name of the boat is a kind of sushi also. And so like all these sushi jokes in there, which I loved.
That's awesome. I didn't catch those. Maybe I would have if I was reading it, but I didn't when I was listening to it. That's pretty funny though.
I thought so too.
That's pretty good. I think the next read I'll have to do like the real way. Just so that I can get the other experience. But like even like all the music references and all of that were awesome.
It's funny that all of the cassette tapes turned to Best of Queen tapes. That cracked me up like every time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really nice at the end, like everything is going to be different now because they're listening to Handel's Water music, and it stays Handel's Water music.
It stays the same. Yes. It's awesome. Yeah, there's so many awesome things. I love it. Well, and like, I don't know, like it's little things. Like they meet at St. James Park, right? Aziraphale and Crowley, like every time they get together for a chat. And it talks about the fish and how the fish have this expectation that everybody's going to feed them. And it has to do with all the spies meeting up, right? That's where all the spies have their meetups. And I got to thinking like, okay, 80s movies, right? That's a big thing, right? I don't know, the Russian spies and the whole espionage thing and James Bond. Anyways, James Bond was before that too, but like just really big, like that's a huge thing. And I think it's maybe less now. It's just changed. It's just changed.
Well, but I think that's a parallel too between Aziraphale and Crowley because they're from opposing sides. And so they're kind of like spies, like meeting up there.
Yeah.
It's a little different.
It is. But that's one of those things that like the culture has changed a bit. I don't know. So I wonder how it would be for somebody that didn't grow up at the time period that we did. I don't know. I'm sure they still get it, but I wonder if it feels different.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd love to meet Neil Gaiman someday. Terry Pratchett too, but
yeah. Have to wait for that one.
Yeah.
So this book, I think, is meant to be satire. And like starting out the book, I wasn't sure what direction it was going to go because it's kind of like poking fun at religion the whole time, a little bit.
A little.
But by the end, I was actually really happy with the way things were going. And I wasn't sure necessarily that I was going to be. But I thought overall it was really optimistic and
I lost you. Optimistic and
yeah, I thought it was optimistic, which I was glad about.
I rather enjoyed it. There's one thing that I wanted to kind of do some comparison or reading, understanding a little bit of, like just to understand the book a little bit more was like the religious differences between, okay, so I know we're Christian, but like the Mormon theology versus the Church of England, the Protestant theology, just to kind of maybe understand a little bit more of like where they were going on some of it. But I just felt like they're really making the, a point for it, it's just okay to be human and it's okay to make choices and we don't, you don't have to be tugged or forced every which way. And anyway, I quite liked it.
I did also. I thought like throughout, agency plays a really large role in this book. And I liked the way it went at the end where like they basically, like he chose not to be the Antichrist anymore. And basically by the end, they're saying like agency is worth keeping. Like all this other stuff is going on and it could be one side or the other winning. But everyone has their choices and it's worth fighting for and preserving, which I liked a lot.
Yes, absolutely. And that's, yeah, I really, it was an interesting way to go about it, but it was good. It's good to get there. And it's interesting, like to take and have this on 11-year-old boy, being the. So what did you think of that? What did you think of Adam?
Actually, so have you watched Stranger Things?
No, my kids are obsessed with it, but I just haven't got there yet.
It kind of like this whole thing kind of reminded me of Stranger Things a little bit. And maybe it was just because they're like riding their bikes around while all this crazy stuff is happening. But it reminded me of that a little bit. And I don't know. I thought Adam was really interesting as a character because I didn't know what he was going to choose or if he even was able to choose anything. Because like it keeps talking like throughout the whole first part of the book about like all of these influences, but then it turns out that they aren't able to keep influencing him because he gets lost off somewhere else and nobody knows where he is and they're all focusing on the wrong kid. But still, even after that, I wasn't sure like what other forces that we didn't know about were affecting him because all this stuff starts happening and he starts like all these powers start manifesting and things. And so I just wasn't really sure at all, but I was really pleasantly surprised when he did realize what was happening and when he made his own choice. And I liked that, like, even though he had all of this power to be able to do all these other things and basically destroy the world if he wanted to, when he realized that that's not really what he wanted, the other choice he made was just as powerful. I really liked that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yes. What'd you think of them naming him Adam?
I thought it was funny. Especially after all the other names that the nun, so this like Satanist nun is Sister Mary Loquacious.
Loquacious, yes.
Like, suggesting all these names like Wormwood and like all these like names with evil connotations,
Right.
and then they go with Adam, and I think it's a funny hint as to how the story is going to unfold.
Yes. Well, and I thought it was odd, like she finally suggests the name Adam, Sister Mary Loquacious, and she says, and she thinks to herself, well, because that's not too bad, I guess.
Uh-huh.
What is that supposed to mean? You know, like at that moment, where are you going? You know, I like that it ends up being Adam. And there's this sort of hint of like, well, what? Well, this is just a lull. You know, like we've survived this, but he still has choices to make in the future. And where are we going to go from here? And you know, it's not like we're never going to have to face this ever again. But I love the whole imagination bit and the whole like I just want to hang on to my childhood and to my home. And when they divvy up, when Adam and they like, or them, like they divvy up the world in their game, and he's just like, well, I just want home. Like I don't need the rest of it. So did you look up Tadfield?
I did not.
Okay, because so the Japanese cities were all sushi, right? So Tadfield is not a real place. It's a made-up place. But I was, anyways, you know, like the name thing, right? So I looked it up, and Tad is also can also mean small boy, like literally the home of a small boy.
That's really funny.
Isn't that something? Who does that? Writers do that. So I don't know. Quite an adventure.
I really enjoyed it.
Yes. But I do walk away from their novels like part of me like wow, and the other part of me like wow, I feel really dumb. Like my brain could not do this. So yeah. My brain is this big.
Yeah, when I first started reading this, like I was starting to get a few little flashbacks. Because I don't know, it seems like we've read a lot of books where like I'm just like, whoa, I'm like, whoa, what's going on? Like I can't make these connections. I don't know what's happening.
Yes.
But it's fun.
It is fun. And I was reading that recently, which I'll tell you about again later. But I read the comment that like any book that you read and like any successful literary work, it should just work on the story level. You should just be able to pick it up and it's just a good story. And then, you know, like you read it and you reread it, like the other levels should come out, you know, like the more you know, the more experience you bring to it, the more other things that you've read, you know, whatever you bring back to it, then the other things should come out. But it should just work as a good story when you start out. So if you don't know it all at first, it's okay. But it really does make me feel like, okay, these people are brilliant and I am not.
Wow.
But maybe if I read enough of this, you know.
Yeah, it'll start to
my brain will start to expand.
Oh, that would be nice.
One hopes, right? One hopes.
Well, I don't have anything else in my notes. Was there anything else you wanted to cover?
I think we ran kind of all over the place, but I think we covered most of it. There was a lot on this one, but no, it was good.
Okay, then tell us about next month's book. It's your
Okay. I'm super excited. It's nonfiction, of course, and anybody else would tell me I'm crazy and why would I want to read this? But it's How to Read Literature Like a Professor by Thomas C. Foster, who is a professor. So I'll just read you the little thing. It says, like from the back of the book, a thoroughly revised and updated edition of Thomas C. Foster's classic guide, a lively and entertaining introduction to literature and literary basics, including symbols, themes, and contexts that shows you how to make your everyday reading experience more rewarding and enjoyable. While many books can be enjoyed for their basic stories, there are often deeper literary meanings interwoven in these texts. How to Read Literature Like a Professor helps us to discover those hidden truths by looking at literature with the eyes, at the literary codes of the ultimate professional reader, the college professor. So what does it mean when a literary hero is traveling along a dusty road, or when he hands a drink to his companion, or when he's drenched in a sudden rain shower? Ranging from major themes to literary models, narrative devices, and form, Thomas C. Foster provides us with a broad overview of literature, a world where a road leads to a quest, a shared meal may signify a communion, and rain, whether cleansing or destructive, is never just a shower, and shows us how to make our reading experiences more enriching, satisfying, and fun. Which sounds a lot like a textbook, I know. But I picked it up. It's like the size of a, just like a little paperback. And I picked it up because I'm a nerd. And I started reading it, and I was like laughing reading it. Mm-hmm. It is just way fun. And it has short little chapters, and each one's like a different theme or a different whatever. Like I think the first chapter is, what is it called? It's all about quests. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think how it's titled, but it's like everything's a quest, except when it's not. Anyways, he just has this kind of no nonsense, funny style, and it just sounds like somebody's talking to you. But it's pretty amusing. So, and I found loads of things that some of them I thought about before, but loads of new things to think about. And of course, it's all about understanding literature, which is my favorite thing ever. So that's what we're going to read.
Awesome. I'm super excited.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all next month.
All right. Ta-da!